Okay, 8 p.m. Let's start today's live stream. We're in Sao Paulo. Today is June 3rd, 2026. Today's live stream is about God with a lowercase g. So it's God with God, Fatherland, family, and Margarine family. The origin of hate. I was going to put God, Fatherland, Margarine family, and freedom, or family and freedom, God, pariah, family, freedom, the origin of hate, but it was too long, so I put God, Fatherland, Margarine family. So we're going to study these structures, this way of grabbing your attention and mind with these terms. God, a divinity, fatherland, which has to do with the state, territory and family, a unit, a clan, and the family model. And this thing about the origin of hatred. Why this origin of hatred? We're going to study how structures can hijack you, hijack your attention with terms, with things that are abstractions and have nothing to do with reality, with materiality. But in practice, it grabs your attention, it grabs your money, it grabs your vote. So that's important. We'll take a look. First, God, country, family, and margarine is an interesting thing. We're going to recap two very important themes. One thing is the jivasa, the new collective agent. What is felt all together? This has to do with this lowercase d God, the communication of selves. And then there's something I'm going to talk about that has to do with homeland, which is a kind of body territory, and family has a lot to do with the clans that we're going to talk about. Let's make the family model more flexible. So I'm going to try to do that until the end of the live stream. Try to bring these things together. The jivasa, the body as territory, and also these clans and families, inclusive or exclusive clans. So you have a general idea of what we're discussing, the scope of what we're talking about. First, to avoid pressure, to avoid turning it into a simple conflict, to get to the essence, to the root cause of things, and not discuss the effect of what God, country, the idealized family, and the origin of hatred are without knowing the main cause of things. Let's go. The root cause of so much hatred, so much diversity, so many problems between people, it's the creation of money. And one more thing, it's the production of excess. Hey, Jacques, what are you talking about, man? Today, money is created through debt. Money isn't created through credit, it's created through debt. And the production of excess is a very important thing to understand. Very important. Go back to before 1500. We're here in Latin America or the American continent. A lot of deities, Pachamama, Omama, Viracote, Tupa, a lot of debt. So we had religiosity, we had spirituality, we had peoples on the American continent. They were basically decimated. It was a complete genocide, but it doesn't matter. For now, let's talk. We had peoples. And what about the peoples back then? What was the idea of the people, of this community, of these clans? We will produce for our sustenance. We will produce for ourselves, for our food, our water, our drink, our home, our place. For ourselves, we will produce for our own good, and we will sell the surplus. What was money like back then at that time? Money was a pretty feather. It was cocoa. It was used when trading that surplus cassava, that surplus corn. When trading these things, I could add an extra ear of corn, an extra kernel of corn, an extra cocoa bean, an extra feather to exchange goods for goods. And with these feathers or these objects, so money existed. Yes, it did. But we were trading surplus in our current culture. We, especially the agropop, agricultural producers. He goes to extremes. Jackson, but how is that related to God, country, and family? Magarine's family, everything. We're manufacturing. Realize. Let's take a nice cycle. Let's suppose you're from Agropop. Let's assume you borrowed 10 billion from the state at 3% annual interest. You borrowed 10 billion to plant corn. Of course, you won't borrow that much. It's a lot of agriculture. You borrow it to plant corn. You make 5 billion leak to a tax haven. It disappears from Brazil. You use 4 billion to plant and build your networks. If the planting goes wrong or if the harvest isn't good, you take that money and get the 10 billion back. The 5 billion that went out of the country is returning in the form of dollars being invested at 15% interest. That is, I take 10 billion and I'll pay 3% interest. But of those 10 billion, 5 billion has already gone to a tax haven and is returning as investment in Brazil, earning 15% interest per year. Something strange here, but that's not the case yet. There's still a billion left for you to have fun with, right? That's not the case yet, but I went there and bought, made, and produced corn. Me, a bunch of pop farmers. And in corn production, the country had 100,000 tons of corn left over. 100,000 tons of corn that came out of the stalks. Corn spoils, this corn runs out, this corn is surplus. It was a surplus production, not for the local market, it was for the international market. There was a surplus of 100 billion, 100,000 tons of corn. And at this moment, there's an American tariff on our corn. Man, either lower the price or throw it all away. We've lost our sovereignty. Did you notice? Come on, God, fatherland, family, Daisy. Come on. Before, money wasn't created through debt. Today, money is created through debt. What debt? The country, the Brazilian state, has debt securities. It issues debt securities, and a group of people, usually a very high class, buys a lot of debt securities to earn 15% interest per year. But also a group of people, you go there and take billions of dollars and only pay 3%. Of those billions, half goes to tax havens and returns in the form of dollar investments in Brazil. So the vast majority of dollars invested in Brazil are leaked dollars. It's money that was laundered to Brazil's tax haven. Just be aware of that. Why is this important? Because we have to understand that God, country, and family are trying to hide this structure. When we know about this structure, we won't be naive anymore, polarizing left and right. Now I'm from a left-wing party. No, man, there will always be these parties. But now you'll know the direction, the promo, what's happening in this country. When you talk about God, this God I speak of with a lowercase g, this combination of I is my idea. My first contact with God in various ways came from a religious background within the Adventist church. Now, I sympathize with Christianity, but I'm not a member of the Christian faith, but I sympathize. I think Christianity is a good religious line. I like that. I like Christianity, but this religious line talks about God, the God that I was. Created to believe in this Christian religious line, it's God, the Bible, and Jesus. He's connected, he's bound. So every time I talk to people, sometimes they ask, do you believe in God? I say, look, what is God to you? Then the person says, God, 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 what? Does this God include some greater force outside of Jesus and the Bible? Or is this God, God, the Bible, and Jesus? No. This God is God and the Bible and Jesus. So it's not such a broad God, a restricted and limited God. He's a canned God, a way to sell him through whoever holds the power. The knowledge of what he is through pastors, priests, right? Bishops and such defining who this God is through how they interpret him, like in Gessi, Zemenaeus of Kabira. Okay. This Jesus from him becomes the Christ of the Christians, who is anointed is the Messiah. The people of Israel themselves, the people naturally chosen by TNA, do not accept him as Messiah. So they do not recognize Jesus or Christ as Messiah. This is a Christian thing only. So this God is not even the God of Israel. He is the God of the Christians. It is God, the Bible, and Jesus. So there is a restriction on this way of being an absolute and creative being, but it's a restriction, okay? My idea of God is a little different. It's a lowercase t. I could use Geus, or it could also be that little z, Zeus, Greek God, because it doesn't matter. It's a bunch of EUSs. And these selves, for me, are tensional selves. They are selves that you have at the moment you are, that you feel yourself to be before you realize it. Tensional selves, what I feel myself to be before I perceive it. I'm talking to you now and you're feeling yourself being you. You're listening to me. This feeling of being you is a being. It's a self, a tensional self. On top of this self, you listen to me and perceive what I hear. But you already feel yourself being on top of a self. And you have a lot of tensional selves. In the morning, in the afternoon, at night, hungry, thirsty, tired, excited, happy, right? With a headache, without a headache. You have a lot of tensional selves. When you're stressed, which I always call zones 1, 2, and 3. Do you tense your body into zone 1 to do things? Relax, zone 2. Otherwise, you're constantly on edge and can't let go anymore. But that's still a mistake. And even when you're on edge, you start to perceive things based on that being that tense self. So what is a tense self? It's your breathing, your heartbeat, your inner body, your outer body, everything you feel. At each moment, it's a different tense self. It's you. And why do I talk about lowercase i's? This God that is all of you throughout the day. Each tensional self has a different way of thinking. It's funny how sometimes some of your tensional selves say that this is right, and other tensional selves you have at some other time say that. This is really cool, especially for women. If you're a woman and you're having PMS, if you're a teenager, you'll see that throughout the month, something that's supposed to be right goes wrong. The case of your tension-filled self, PMS is a very strong thing. Or your pains, when you have some much greater pains, that's the flow of it. You're a boy too, but you won't have as much flexibility as a woman has. Women fluctuate much more emotionally. So she has to have control over these tension-filled selves. Women are naturally managers of tension-filled selves. It's more natural. Men start by sometimes imposing a more authoritarian self, and women, through the flexibility of managing these tensions throughout the month, can make that authoritarian self more flexible. Because she knows what's right now, but what's wrong in a little while might be wrong. Do you understand? So these tensional selves are like that. Each tensional self has a way of thinking. Each tensional self also seeks a way to believe in its habits, to relax, to do something. Adding up all these tensional selves and you remembering them, that's a process we call metacognition, thinking about your thoughts. And each thought is different and comes from a self that is yourself at certain different moments. The sum of these thoughts, the harmonization of these thoughts, makes you become a conductor of tensional selves, a conductor of yourself, So it means that you will mark the time and the hour in which the tensional self will lead your body now as if it were a conductor. Now the violin, now the piano, now the bass drum, now the trumpet. So each tensional self, you raise it to act in that moment. And some tensional selves to act in this actor that you have to be. You earn a salary to be a doorman of the building, or to be a teacher, to be a banker, to be I don't know what, a writer or a musician. At that moment, you have to activate a tensional self that plays the role, that plays the actor you have to develop there, because that's what you're getting paid for. You get paid to be that figure, that actor, so you That character comes in. Whoever maintains that character has to be attentional self X. Sometimes when that character becomes too heavy and you can't handle your subconscious errors, you have to change jobs, because otherwise you'll get into trouble, a lot of problems that cause a lot of allostatic stress on your body. Because you can in some way regulate yourself through a team, a group. But if the group is tense and everyone is only focused on money and trying to impose an act that your body can't handle, you suffer. We suffer when things get too pressured. We're only talking about God, that's the first thing. But each tense self you have perceives a religious world, a sporting world. It perceives sexuality, music, art, the beauties of life, food, drink, everything. So when you talk about God himself, there are several, and in a Christian God, let's say, even if it's the God of the Bible and Jesus, that's fine. But if you talk about him, it's a restriction. But there are some utensional aspects that you have, that you perceive this God. Okay? It continues to be a utensional God. That's what I wanted to tell you. So it's not a canned form of God, but simply every way you perceive the Creator. And truly, I'll tell you, you are the creator of what you perceive. You are in an intentional self and you create what you perceive. How do you create? Your intentional self activates memory spaces. And when you perceive things, they pass through these memory spaces and you will have a guess, a way of figuring out what you are seeing and perceiving. You assemble what you perceive. The signals enter through your openings, nose, ears, mouth, eyes, entering through the information holes, and you process them according to the brain areas and the memory spaces you have activated. This or that. So you are the creator of your perception. Want to change your perception of the same stimulus you're receiving? Activate different memories. You'll see that you'll perceive the same stimulus in a different way, because you are the creator of your perception. God, creator of your perception. Understand? So you have to be a little more responsible for it. Homeland, God, homeland, and Margarine family. Our homeland Brazil is being held hostage. Our homeland Brazil is being held hostage by no more than 200 individuals with CPF numbers, Brazilian tax identification numbers, belonging to the super rich. Since we're talking about the super rich, can you define who these super rich are? Where are they located? Look, we have a case now in Brazil of this type of corruption, something involving the bank. He's involved with Banco Mestre. The super rich I'm talking about are above Volcario. Who's above him? Volcario is almost the poster boy for the super rich. The super rich I'm talking about are above Volcario, above billions. The guy was dealing with billions. He was getting into that. It went wrong and he went to jail. The super rich I'm talking about don't go to jail. Those responsible for the crises and robberies at the American store won't go to jail. It'll be the CEO, the director, blah, blah. The super rich I'm talking about, which is our hijacked homeland, is almost 200 individuals. This homeland is hijacked by those who control banks, newspapers, television, congressmen, senators, presidents, judges, and institutions. And it doesn't allow any government to pay the public debt. These 200 individuals basically earn the lion's share of the trillion in annual interest that we pay every year. Every year, nearly a trillion in annual interest goes to a small segment of society. What if the executive branch wanted to pay off the debt and not pay that interest anymore? It's a high level executive decision. Retail CBDC, do it. The money appears in the form of Drex. Pay off the debt. Debt is gone. Don't let it happen because our homeland is being held hostage. So, when we talk about God, priests, and family, using these jargon filled terms, it polarizes ideas because someone is supposedly going against God, against our homeland. That's a lie. So, regarding what we say about homeland, you have to know the following: the homeland is the state. The homeland is where the state must respect its basic unity. The unity of the state, or the basic unity of the state, is a body territory, indivisible, a body territory, me and the territory where I am, where I perceive myself, the water I'm drinking, the trees near me. This body territory is the unity of the homeland. The homeland becomes an ideology for those who carry this flag, and those who are against this flag are enemies of the homeland. Where did the idea of an enemy of the homeland come from if these people are in the same territory? Ah, but you have to think like me or you're an enemy of the fatherland. But you, your thoughts and your questions, do they have to do with you or with someone who is influencing you or a group that is influencing you? So the fatherland, it has been taken from us. The term fatherland has already been misused. It already has distorted concepts to keep the fatherland kidnapped, to keep the state kidnapped, to keep us paying $1 trillion in annual interest, to keep money being generated in debt, to maintain the production of excess food, so that when that excess food rises, we don't know what to do with it. And we lose sovereignty because if that food isn't sold, it will spoil. It's a loss. We deforested a lot of territory, produced a lot of corn, soy, or wheat. What are we going to do with that? We produce an excess and suffer a loss of sovereignty. If nobody buys the excess, there's a big social problem. But Jackson, are you against production? No, we have to circulate the money. But if that totally deforested area wasn't deforested and had the natural original forests, and we had a carbon credit allocated, the money being generated from the credit, the money would circulate. And if we had a citizen's right, the money would be secular. Then we wouldn't need to be so focused on producing surplus because the money would already circulate naturally and be created through credit, not debt as it is now. Do you see the hijacking of the homeland? Our money today is created through debt. The state creates the paper money from the debt. When a bank lends money, it puts new money, not really new money, into the market, but it puts money into the market through loans. Money that doesn't exist before comes into existence. It becomes a digital number. When someone lends money from agriculture at 3% interest, 10 billion, and if 5 billion is laundered and sent abroad, it's because that borrowed money isn't yet Drex. It doesn't yet have a digital number. That's why those who are hijacking our country are against Drex, against PIX, because PIX will have traceability, Drex will have traceability, and it will be more difficult to launder that money leaked abroad, like agribusiness taking 10 billion and sending 5 billion to tax havens to then invest in Brazil itself to earn 15% while only paying 3% per year. Do you understand? This is the kidnapping of the homeland. The beloved homeland is kidnapped, but our minds are shaped by what? By television, social media. On social media, there is a huge attack. God, homeland, and family. Freedom. And that's how we get to the Margarita family. The Margarina family is fantastic. It's fantastic. Let's talk about the Margarina family and God, fatherland, and family. But let's talk about family too. Instead of the Margarina family and freedom, the Margarina family is like this: father, mother, son wears blue, little daughter wears pink. And what about freedom? The little boy won't be able to wear pink, and the little girl won't be able to exist in blue. In other words, the girl won't play soccer, the boy won't play with dolls, and so on. a structure built upon that. Where is the foundation of this Margarine family? Based solely on concepts coming from the media, solely on concepts coming from newspapers, from the news, from our pastors, our priests, our bishops, because the family, the first family, and Jesus' family was a woman without a husband, a virgin woman with a child, a woman with a child, with a single mother. That's the original family. That's where it began. The single mother starts Christianity. This single mother had Joseph by her side, a companion, and so on. That's how it is. Anything wrong with that? Nothing. That's how it is. It's the family of what's possible. This is important for you because the idealized family, it breaks down. It puts a block in your head that you have to be the ideal son, you have to be the ideal father, you have to be the ideal mother. And when you're not, that comparison starts to hurt you, and you compare that pain to others. Who goes against your concept of family? You become aggressive, you develop hatred for that person because you're frustrated at not being able to achieve your ideal family, father, mother, son, and daughter. It's not necessary. That's where the clan comes in, both inclusive and exclusive. The inclusive clan is like this. A clan is a gathering of people that can include your own family if possible. But it's also a gathering of your club, your friends, your classmates, your work colleagues, people. Every time you go to a group, it's a clan. Bringing all your clans together is a formation you need for self-regulation, for you to be well in life. And not a picture perfect family, that kind of family that never existed. Not even with Christ. The Christian family talks about family, but even Christ didn't have a family like that. Christ's family was different. Christ was the son of a single mother. Within a few years, he was already out of home. He left. He died at 33. It's a shame. A person who had an enormous capacity for leadership and died at 33. So look, this model, who is using this model? Who kidnapped the homeland? Who kidnapped the homeland uses these terms to make you indignant, to make you look at God, look at freedom. And if you look at ancient times, if you go into the Crusades, which is the movement from the medieval church attacking Muslims, but even within the Muslim world, there was freedom. In the name of freedom, behind that name of freedom lies money. From a few people, from a state wanting to build a resort here in the Gaza area, a resort here in such and such a place. So they go there, destroy, create a conflict between one country and another because they already have a country hijacked, they already have a state hijacked. They take their army and control it and wage war there. And from what little is left over from that war, they can already do business, make deals. I live here in Sao Paulo. I live near Janopolis. And between conversations there, every now and then there are conversations with Arabs, with Jews there. I said, and these things, these wars, oh, Jackson, stop. Stop. Why? It's just money, man. It's just money. It's money. And then when the money starts piling up, it becomes a religious thing, God, country, family, because it's a holy war. In reality, there are people making a lot of money behind it. So what will remain of you if you start to have an idea, a structure about when they start talking about God? What kind of God is this? Country? Does it have to do with my body or territory? Does the homeland have anything to do with me? And will I one day, as a unit of the state, earn a citizen's drek, a type of government benefit, earn the state's dividends? If I own the state, why is the state's dividend now being passed on in the form of 1 trillion in annual interest to those who have hijacked the state? And the state will remain hijacked. And another thing, when you talk about those who hijack the state, think of people above the local level, above the guy from Banco Master, way above. And the people, sometimes you can get confused because sometimes there are people who, out of nowhere, it starts to grow and becomes very rich in society, but out of nowhere. So sometimes you look closely at the concept that everyone has the right to become rich, but what is the financial process? How did it happen there? What groups did they allow themselves to be drawn into this game of millions going back and forth? Influenced by these people, this very large amount of money causes people to lose something called givasa. Yesterday, I spoke with a guy, man, in the United States. It's very cool. But there's no givasa there. There's no agent. There's no collective there. You arrive at a restaurant somewhere and you don't feel like we're all together. It's every man for himself. There's a God for each person. It's very different. It's money. In Latin American societies, we always have this we're together mentality. You go on a boat and it feels like we're all together. It feels like there's a bond between us. That's a bond. That's the unity of a group. It's fundamental for us and fundamental for us to grow in this idea of collectivity, of body territory, of states, that we are the state. The state is not outside of us. The state. And so we will keep on building a better state. So be sure to vote for your proper representative, your proper senator, someone who possesses a slightly more open mind and heart towards the people. Together we will create a better society, a better Brazil, a better Latin America, which we truly deserve and absolutely deserve very much. Folks, sending a big hug, and I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday.